I would like to welcome and invite Honorable Mr. Justice P Krishna Bhat, former judge of the High Court of Karnataka, to inaugurate the exhibition. Honorable Mr. Justice P Krishna Bhat began his career practicing in the courts of Mangalore before he was appointed as the principal district and sessions judge. He was also the Registrar General of the High Court of Karnataka and Director of Karnataka Judicial Academy. He was appointed as an additional judge of the Karnataka High Court in 2020 and a permanent judge in 21. We are delighted to share that he represented several public interest causes that ESG was a part of before he joined the judiciary. Welcome, sir. We're happy to have you here. I request you to kindly inaugurate the event by lighting the lamp. I also request Robert, Chandran, Suprabha, Joe, Leo, and Bhargavi, as well as Kumar, if he's here, to join in lighting the lamp as well.
The honor of welcoming the former Environment Minister of India, Mr. Jairam Ramesh. Our keynote speaker, Professor Sheila Jasanoff, is also here with us now. And also Vandana Shiva, who is going to deliver the valedictory address tomorrow. A lot of friends and a lot of people who have done important work across India, across the world who are here, and I thank you, Mr. Justice Krishna Bhat. I must also share that he was Environment Support Group's first lawyer. When we were founded, he was the one we went to for 4-5 years. And most of the important cases of industrial planting in the west coast and the coastal Karnataka, he is the one who fought. And one major and famous case that he fought was against this American company called Projectrix. And that was a very, very long fight. And he was the lawyer who worked also with Mr. M.C. Mehta, and we stopped those plants. And we stopped many other projects during that time. And then he went on to become judge and did incredible things. But now he's retired, and I'm happy that he's here with us. Thank you. Please come.
I really don't know what to say because there are more competent and more eloquent people than me here. And judge has a weakness. He keeps on listening without saying anything. So I don't think whether I should really say something. But Leo Saldanha, he lent very able hands with lot of scientific materials when he had to, in those days, the approach of the judiciary was extremely conservative. They were talking only about development, not about sustainability. And I remember very vividly the judge who was presiding the division bench before whom we are arguing the case. He was frequently telling us that this is some kind of terrorism. Terrorism was not a big thing in those days. So I don't know whether you remember that. He was telling, I said, where is this terrorism when you wipe out everyone here because of this kind of behemoths coming here? Do we really require this kind of development which kills all kinds of ideas, good ideas about sustainability? So that was basically, how these kinds of big companies entered our shores. It was Cogentrix was a name which was perhaps not heard of by anybody. It was GE which was appearing through that facade. It was a joint venture GE was having with another unknown entity based in Hong Kong, China Light Company. We don't know when China started shedding light on India. Now we know a lot of things are dumped here. China Light and GE. And whole establishment was, appearing as if we are getting a new, manna from up above, heaven. That kind of approach we had, and it was uphill task. And this environment laws had not developed, like environment impact assessment. When we are mentioning this name, judges were gawking at us, saying what kind of things you are mentioning, and carrying capacity, all season test. What kind of things you are mentioning? And up against those days, look at this, the who later became Attorney General K.K. Venugopal. He was appearing for the industry. Anil Diwan, who was supposed to be such, later he supported so many good causes. He was appearing for the industry again. And Altaf Muhammad. And we were really terrorized because we were minnows in the field, both Leo and myself. It was such a wonderful experience. And finally, these fellows got fagged out and they abandoned the project and went away, unlike the current, big people. We were able to throw them out lock, stock, and barrel, even though the court was not very willing to help us. The arguments, division bench, normally that bench was giving, the presiding judge was giving a short shrift for any arguments. The bench had to hear us for 3 weeks. And it created such an impact on the industry that maybe because we are investing such huge amount, their lenders, financiers were backing out from abroad. So finally they went away. So the bottom line is there should be sustained effort from all sides. Otherwise, we will have no tomorrow in this country. No tomorrow. Already a lot of lung infections. You have all kinds of infections. You have all kinds of, now we are going to millets. You can't eat rice because the kind of water we are getting is polluted. The future is extremely dark. And now United Nations has actually commissioned a study. It has brought out, I would request every one of you at least who are interested in this to go through environmental constitutionalism. They are now demanding, at least learned among them, more conscious among them are demanding that now these protections are not enough. By way of interpretive protection that is being given, expansive interpretation being given to the word life in Article 21, that's not enough. In a little unheard of countries, and when you hear those countries, all for wrong reasons, Latin American countries have, structured the protective mechanism into the constitution. So we must all think now, we must take that step to ensure that we don't have to fall back upon this kind of, very doubtful understanding of Article 21 and stretching it beyond the limits. We should have more definite, concrete structural mechanism within the Constitution, treating the environment itself as a being. Like now you have animal protection acts and all that, but this whole environment has no protection. Even DTs have been, given a legal entity. You have the Privy Council decision. It said DT is a legal entity, but environment is not. Environment is not. So give a legal identity. Leo, you must fight now.
You are there to fight us.
I am an extinguished judge. You are a distinguished warrior. So, so thank you, thank you. I won't test your patience. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Really, Sreenivas.
I'm grateful to Leo for giving me this brief opportunity to meet all old friends, old troublemakers, new friends, environmental activists, and I congratulate Leo for the 25th anniversary of the ESG. He was a thorn in my flesh, and the 26 months that I was environment minister, I can assure you that there was a race between him and Vandana Shiva, uh, the general himself. But the general was not a troublemaker. The general was always giving me long, constructive, well researched suggestions. But Leo and Vandana were challenging every decision I was taking or I was about to take. But I must compliment them. They listened to me, they engaged with me, they criticized me quite a lot when I took some decisions, but they were generous in their support when the decisions favored them. But he was really on many issues. I must say that Leo has been a very, very important pillar of support. And I recall the National Green Tribunal, particularly since the judge has spoken. The National Green Tribunal was opposed by many sections, including within the government. There was a lot of opposition within my own government to bringing the National Green Tribunal into fruition. But now it's a reality, it's a living reality. And I might, since I don't see any media people here, I can take the liberty of sharing with you that Rajiv Chandrasekhar, does not belong to my political party, has told me, he'll disown that comment now, but he has told me on numerous occasions in the past that the best thing that could happen to environment is the National Green Tribunal. That actually the National Green Tribunal has helped create public awareness on environmental jurisprudence, helped take decisions which the executive was not willing to take, but which transferred the responsibility for taking those decisions to the tribunal, to the judiciary. So, Leo, keep up the good work. I think you're fighting a losing battle, but nevertheless, we are all with you. I think the assault on all the laws that we have, the Wildlife Protection Act has already been assaulted, and today elephants are being transferred from Arunachal Pradesh to Gujarat as I speak. The Water Pollution Act has survived, surprisingly. The Air Pollution Act is going to undergo major changes. The Forest Conservation Act is about to be redone, lock, stock, and barrel, in the next couple of months. The Environment Protection Act is on the burner, which I think will be the next target. And ultimately, of course, there are other laws, the Forest Rights Act, and so on. So I think you're going to see a very systematic assault on environmental laws, on environmental regulations, on institutions that enforce these laws. And it's going to be a long struggle. The judiciary is a very important element of support. The media should be an element of support, not always now. Today, the media is completely different than what it was 15 years ago or 20 years ago. Parliament, I mean, just to give you an example, the, the amendments to the Forest Conservation Act is not coming to the Standing Committee on Forests for examination, but it's going to some select committee so that these amendments are rubber stamped through. So Parliament as an arena for discussing these issues is increasingly being marginalized. Environmental activists are going to be targeted. As I was walking in, I congratulated Leo, 25 years and no CBI inquiry. The CBI, the ED, the income tax. This is all a systematic assault. What's happened to Ritvik Datta is not accidental. It's part of a concentrated assault on all forms of activism. And the mindset in today's ruling establishment is that environmental activism is anti-national. That environmental activism is not just anti-development, but is anti-national. So it's a long struggle, but I think today environmental awareness in the public is far greater than what it was 15, 20 years ago. People recognize the reality of environmental change, climate change, environmental deterioration. And so I think we can create new partnerships, new alliances, new champions. And that's what we really need. We just have to hang in there. It's a long struggle. And I hope that, I can't see light at the end of the tunnel, frankly, unless you change the tunnel itself, if you know what I mean. And that's where I have to go after this, to appeal to people to change the tunnel. But I have come here not to appeal to you to change the tunnel, but to tell you that I'm a partner in your struggle to find the light at the end of the tunnel. Thank you.
Thank you. I must also say that Barbary and I were targeted by you in the last public hearing on BT Brinjal, and you called us both anti-democratic, but it turned out we were right and you were wrong on that issue. But
No, but you see, at the end of the day, I may have argued with you and Bhushan.
no, but you are a kind
I
of
may
politician.
have argued with Vandana. I was accused of being a Monsanto agent in the Bangalore hearing, which is all there on YouTube. I was accused of being a spokesman for Monsanto. But ultimately, I took the decision which all of you guys wanted.
No. I think, the moratorium decision is probably the bravest that has been taken in post-independent India, because it was a corporate state nexus coming together in such strong forms. And I don't think, I can say this, maybe you will not say anything in response. You didn't have the Prime Minister's support, but you did it anyway. Okay, thank you. I, for once, foxed him. So thank you. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you. We also have two other people who I think are doing incredible work in the state. I invite Kumar Naik to quickly come. I know him because we worked with him when he was Deputy Commissioner of Raichur. When we started as ESG, we worked for 4 years and we started something called Community Access Project, which was to bring democracy down to the grassroots level. Now it is 25 years later. Please say a couple of words. Really, thank you for coming here.
Thank you, Leo, for this opportunity. It feels wonderful to be here with all of you on your 25th anniversary. Wonderful. It has been a great struggle. I know we have been following you continuously. It's my good fortune that I was associated with you in the very initial years in 2000, 99, 2000, when I was the Deputy Commissioner of Raichur. So we thought of, trying to understand how the urbanization takes place across the world in different parts of Europe and things like that, how we can try and understand the mechanism here in India, things like that. That was what brought us together. Subsequently, I have had the opportunity to work in interesting departments like urban development as well as energy, including Power Corporation Limited, etc. Sure. So all these things where I had an interaction with Leo and friends of this world. It has benefited me in my work all along, all these last 25 years. I have immensely benefited by activism and zeal and interest of people like you and organizations like yours. I congratulate you for your very, very sustained efforts in the last 2.5 decades. I wish another 25 more. I perhaps will promise that I will attend that also. All the very best. Thank you.
That is it. Before we go into the hall, Dr. Dilip Kumar, we have a lot of posters around which talk about protection of lakes. A very significant contribution to that was when Dilip Kumar was PCCF of Karnataka. He retired as Director General of Forests when Mr. Jairam Ramesh was Environment Minister. But while he was in Karnataka, he was directed by the High Court to go and find out what is the consequence of privatization of commons. And I would invite you to read his report. It's on our website. Every time I have a doubt about that position, I go and read that report. It's prescient. Couple of thoughts from you. Yes, please.
Thanks, Leo. I mean, this is totally unexpected because in the midst of such luminaries, I don't know what you want me to say. But yes, we started off together in the early days, and whenever I got a chance, whenever you gave me an opportunity, I did try to contribute to this point of view that that development should not be at the cost of environment and people's needs. And I was very fortunate at the end of my career that Mr. Jairam Ramesh took me up to Delhi, and that was a fantastic experience because you understand the compulsions under which the administration works, the government works. I think rather than talk about myself, I would like to make a comment on Jairam Ramesh's experience there. He came in convinced that he could make a difference, but soon he understood the field. And I think towards the end, he was happy that he got brickbats from both sides, that both the environmentalists and the development people were unhappy with him. I think that is a mark of success, that you were able to balance the two. And this is not a losing game, Leo. Keep the fight up, because these are fantastic subjects: commons, grasslands, water bodies, wetlands. These are all fantastic subjects. Please do keep the fight up. We will try to contribute to the extent possible from the background. But people like Mr. Jairam Ramesh and Mr. Gowda and all are with you. And they know how to do the balancing act between these two things. And that's very important because we can't keep on opposing everything. I think finally we were known as the green terrorists in the media. So thank you very much for this opportunity and all the best for the future.
Thank you, everyone, for all those wonderful thoughts that you shared. And we can now proceed inside to begin the main event as well and inaugurate the entire session. So, welcome once again to the commemoration of ESG's 25th anniversary. I'm Nidhi Hanji. I've been working at ESG for a short but enriching 6 months, and it's lovely to see so many people here gathered to celebrate this moment with us. I would like to begin the second part of the evening with a quote from Dr. Ambedkar. Humans are mortal, so are ideas. An idea needs propagation as much as the plants need watering. Otherwise, both will wither and die. And ESG has always been full of ideas and their propagation. Without further ado, I would like to call Ms. Madhu Bhushan to briefly introduce ESG, this special occasion, and welcome our esteemed guests and audience. Ms. Madhu Bhushan is one of our very close friends of the Trust of ESG. She is an independent activist researcher and has been part of SEED since the early 80s and now Gamana Women's Collective. She's been working for the rights of women and disenfranchised communities. Welcome, ma'am.
Good evening to everybody here. Actually, when Leo and Bhargavi asked me to introduce ESG on this very special occasion, which is the 25th year, for which I would really give my deepest and warmest congratulations and good wishes. But when they asked me, I said, why me? I hope at the end of this, they don't, echo the questions to say, why is she? Why did we ask her? So, because my journey with ESG has been pretty rocky. I mean, it's been very exciting. It's been an adventure. But, I was just telling them, is it okay if I introduce ESG in the way that I want to, not very officially, because I am not an environmentalist. So I'm not informed by the kind of very rigorous scientific, legal expertise that drives much of their work and their campaigns. So they have given me full freedom to speak the way I want to. So which is why I'm here before you to introduce or tell you a little bit about ESG the way I see it. Nan-Kanda ESG is the theme today. Actually, when way back, I think this was sometime in 2013 or 14, when again Leo and Bhargavi asked me to be a trustee of ESG, and I said no, even at that time. I said no, because my expertise is not that. Yes, I'm a feminist, I'm a women's rights activist, and do kind of connect with all the issues that we're working with, but I don't have that kind of groundedness in the issues. But like I said, knowing Leo's relentless kind of bullying and Bhargavi's persistent persuasion, I managed to stay on as a friend of the trust. And so here I am as a friend of the trust to speak to you about ESG as I have seen and experienced it. The official history, of course, I will leave to people like Joe and Suprabha and others who will be able to give you a much more, learned history. But I will speak about my personal history. And as I was thinking about how I could capture my personal history of how I experienced ESG, I realized that perhaps it could be summed up in terms of the 5 basic elements. Now, I don't know if that mug is connected to that. Sorry, you haven't yet released the logo, right? Okay, but my experience, I realized, could be summed up in terms of the 5 basic elements that make up life, nature, and environment, which is the Pancha Mahabhutas of earth, water, fire, wind, and space. I suppose being environment support group, how else could one experience it? Before ESG, actually, I met Leo when he first landed up in Bangalore with the cogentric confrontation tucked in his back pocket. So one knew that he was trouble from the word go. Then from the margins, we could see how the profile and work of ESG got slowly built up. We were, of course, fellow travelers in Bangalore, not two large civil society circles, so it was natural that we kept bumping into each other. And one could see how systematically they were building the foundation for the wide-ranging work that they were doing, from the more I suppose in today's context, you can see the more acceptable Hasuru Usru campaign that really, in a way, I think brought in a lot of the the activists of today, who've come into even human rights and all of that, I think have their roots, like including Shaheen. I was talking to Shaheen. She also said that she came in through the Hasuru Usru. So I think, ESG has also kind of nurtured a lot of the activists of today. And I think that's to the credit of ESG. So they were the kind of wide-ranging work that they were doing, from the more acceptable Hasuru Usru anti-tree cutting campaigns to the more challenging, questioning development, challenging the nice road or not, or the lake privatization of lakes. So all of which were not only destroying the environment, but also displacing farmers and rural communities and impacting on the human rights of marginalized communities. And all this formed the foundation for this very solid and grounded work of ESG that was also defined by the many and multiple directions in which they flowed. They, of course, faced threats, which I think they're very used to, and were challenged by powerful lobbies everywhere, but they were able to meet these challenges with their well-honed skills of engaging with the law and systems through public interest litigation, advocacy, public outreach, to both challenge the system and get dialogue with it. And that, I think, is one of the trademarks of ESG, that it challenges the system and yet engages with it. It stays rooted on earth, yet flows like water, taking the shape and contours of the land on which it flows. Maybe I would like to share a couple of my own experiences of flowing with ESG through its various work areas. I remember back in 2007, they asked me to speak at the release of their book, Green Tapeism. It was a review of the environmental impact assessment notification. I, of course, did not know too much about it. Like I keep saying, I'm not an environmentalist. For some strange reason, Leo thinks I am one. So I keep getting into these, situations. But I did, as expected. I was, like I said, it was difficult for me to do. And Leo sold it to me saying that it's like think of it like a chase thriller. It's a James Hadley chase thriller. That's how he described, green tapeism. So I said, okay, I was quite a fan of, chase in my younger days. So I said, okay, let me give it a shot. And I must say that it may not have exactly been a chase novel, but I was struck, and enlightened by its very, very meticulous, compilation of facts and arguments. That was a solid critique of the EIA, but within its given framework. And even an environment illiterate like me was able to get some understanding of the inadequacies of the EIA, be it its how it was seen as a compromise with investor lobbies, how it was marked with inadequate decentralization, new wasteful bureaucracies, process deficiencies, exclusions, etc., etc. So you see, I did read it, and I did learn something that has continued till today. So I was able to get a grasp of some of the basic environmental legislation, despite being a congenital skeptic of the certainty of law that in our feminist world was totally distinct from the vagaries of life. But today, of course, in the context of the total breakdown of the laws and commitment to even the basic constitutional norms, I begin to see the political value of ensuring legal accountability, even from a system that has gone rogue. Another dimension of their work, which I have engaged with, is their consistent attempts to broaden and deepen pedagogies of learning through their very well-structured study abroad programs that I was invited to come and speak to all the youngsters who used to come from different parts of the world, and from my experience of working with women in marginalized communities. And I think I also began to appreciate how developing and strengthening these kind of pedagogies is as important as important as activism and as campaigning and as community mobilizing. In yet another adventure, again, remembering the past, I remember another adventure when we gate crashed into a World Bank public hearing. In fact, I remember Dunu Roy was on the other side and Leo was on this side, and we were in the middle. So we gate crashed into this World Bank public hearing that we were barred from. And I heard Bhargavi speak so movingly and passionately about the loss of livelihoods of women from the pastoral communities of Chalkare. They had just taken up that issue. So of Chalkare, where a science city was being constructed. And I subsequently had the good fortune of being carted off to Chalkare for a public hearing, where I could see ESG's commitment to amplify the voices of the communities that were being impacted by those development programs that have a disastrous, impact on the environment and people at the least of it. And there is, of course, where I met Karianna and all the women who Bhargavi was talking about. And then finally, since I connect this to earth and water, we personally to end this part, we personally benefited from, I want to say, where I and our organization personally benefited from ESG's sharp insights and ability to weave together concerns related to both environment and the rights of forest-dwelling communities that most mainstream environmentalists would see as adversarial. The rights of the forest versus the rights of, forest communities. And we had been engaged with, working for the rights, the land rights of the Hakipiki and Iruliga tribals, who are next to the Banerghatta National Park. And it was a particularly difficult issue for various reasons. And one of the reasons was the Forest Department was unwilling to sign it over, though the land had been granted in 62. They were unwilling to give over the land because of the fear of real estate mafia and all, which is very real. So Leo, also came into this, and he there was a suggestion that he made, which was actually taken up by the government, and where we suggested that the Forest Department can pass a no development. It can pass the grant with a no development clause on the 350 acres, and that kind of satisfied the Forest Department also, saying that okay, we are not handing over our precious land to the real estate mafia, and we were able to get a very, very solid order. And here I would like to acknowledge ESG and Leo's contribution to this. But of course, the fact that the land still remains unrealized after 60, 70 years is another story. And in the midst of all this engagement with earth and water that defines the work that they have been doing, how can I not talk about wind and fire, okay, which are the other avatars of ESG? Now, we're all very seriously talking about the work that they do. But I think it's also important to look at people and processes. We take ourselves so seriously because we are such political beings. We forget that we're also human, we're also vulnerable, we're also, there's also something personal that defines us. And I think that is something which I've seen very closely in ESG and which has really endeared me to ESG. I guess if I stay on, it's because I've seen that part of them. So I want to share a little bit of that part. I hope I have your permission. I warned you. I said I'm going to say anything that I want. Okay. You see, because this is the most exciting and the masala part. Because post 2013, when I was invited into the inner circle of ESG as a trustee, and of course I said no, so then I was kind of inducted as a friend of the trust. I got hit by, not a wind, but I got hit by a tornado, which I was least expecting. Now, all organizations have internal tumult and differences. All of us do. I mean, let's be, quite clear. And I think that's healthy. That's good, because we are talking of differences. We're talking of dissent. We're talking of diversity, and I think it's good. And I myself have been part of a work collective where meetings and arguments could get extremely heated, to put it mildly. Even in my own collective. And we also know what happens to democracies. And like I said, I'm all for it because we all know what happens to democracies when there's no space for dissent and difference. So I thought I was fully equipped to deal with these stormy matters, in ESG, given how opinionated and strong each one of them there is. But this was taken to another different level. Remember, I told you about Leo's relentless bullying and Bhargavi's persistent persuasion. They took that to another level. But it was good fun. It was like watching a live episode of Tom and Jerry. It was really where you could never be sure who was chasing who and who you should avoid. And all attempts at conflict resolution remained like the UN ones, totally futile. And the generals continued to combat each other. Perhaps there was some collateral damage too. But the remarkable thing, and this is why I say I still continue to hold ESG very dear to me. The remarkable thing is that, like with nature, this storm too passed. The raging fires dimmed, and a calm descended in which they all went back to work, with their commitments and camaraderie not only intact, but fully renewed and strengthened. And those of us who tried to douse the fire and throw out life vests to those drowning were left wondering what was that storm all about. And that for me is the moral of the story. And yet another hallmark of ESG, which is the capacity to hold on to and nurture friendships and communities that matter, however tough the going goes. And testimony to that is the strong team of trustees and friends that ESG has, both old and new. Old ones like Robert with his very rational wisdom, Dinesh with his wacky wisdom, and now the wonderful Suprabha with her very sentient wisdom, Joe with his grounded wisdom, all of who continue to nurture and nourish ESG for the vibrant space it is. I miss Arthur's, gentle presence and Malesh, but I'm sure they remain connected, through the special bonds that all of you have forged. And talking of ESG as a vibrant space brings me to the final element, which is that of air, clean, open, breathing, inclusive, all-encompassing air. All of which it is not, thanks to the political climate of today, which is so polluted and polluting in many ways. But in this world that is getting so polarized, divisive, and extractive, and in which spaces for diversity and differences are shrinking, the fact that you continue to engage, that ESG continues to engage with all, I think is remarkable, whether it's with friends or with enemies, even if they want to strangle you. And while you're engaging, you seek to arm yourself not only with facts and rational analysis, but also a relentless and persistent commitment to a more open and compassionate politics. Leo was sharing the other day about how he talked non-stop for 5 hours to Rahul Gandhi as part of the Bharat Jodo, yatra. I have little doubt that he has the capacity to do the same, even with the PM or the Home Minister of this country. And I'd love to be a fly on the wall to listen to that. I wish ESG continued strength, resilience, hope, and humor on this journey for the next few decades, I hope, in which I hope that you will gather and nurture more young minds like Nidhi and Amrita and many others. You need to nurture them, you need to keep them with you, because they are the ones who will ultimately take forward the battle in newer and more creative ways. For as Mr. Jairam Ramesh pointed out, the battle, he says it's lost. I'm saying it's far from over. So wishing you all the very best, and thank you for having me as part of the journey.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for that very accurate introduction of ESG. I'm sure Leo and Bhargavi were very happy that they asked you to do it. I would also request Robert John Chandran, Ms. Suprabha Seshan, Mr. Joe Athialy, Dr. T.B. Dinesh, the other trustees of ESG to very briefly reflect on the past 25 years of ESG. Can we please have you on stage? Mr. Robert Chandran is an associate professor of biological studies at the Indian Institute of Science, Education and Research at Kolkata.
So, good evening, and much has been said already, so I don't want to say anything more. I actually met Leo. We were classmates. Bhargavi, Leo, and me were classmates in our college. So that's how I got to know Leo. But I went in a different path, and I just bumped into Leo at some time during the Cogentrix struggle. And I sort of understood some things there that were really different from what I was doing purely in academics. So that's how my journey really started, and I've sort of stuck along with the whole group. I don't do really much for ESG, but I hang around on the wall and try to understand what they do. So I'll leave it to others to say more.
Mr. Joe Athialy is the Executive Director of the Center for Financial Accountability.
Thank you. I didn't know that I'll have to speak today. I joined when the fire happened, as she was kind of saying, and I'm still here. ESG, Leo, Bhargavi have been a fellow traveler through our struggle. We have been kind of learning from them. We have been taking solidarity and support from them all through our work. They continue to kind of inspire us and lead us, and not just us, a lot of other organizations. And it's very privileged to be a part of this team, and wishing ESG many more years of great work. Thank you.
Dr. T.B. Dinesh is the founder and technology director of Serverlots. And Ms. Suprabha Seshan lives and works at the Gurukula Botanical Sanctuary in the Western Ghats.
One thing I realized, you cannot say no to ESG. You cannot say no to Leo. I've had a hard time saying no to Leo for the last 7 years or so. And there's always a good meal at the end of it. So the delight, though, is this
engagement or a conversation. And, I live in Wayanad in Kerala and knew about ESG for the longest time because I'm also from Bangalore. But this sense of looking at the world as it is, and a radical realism is what I would like to call it, and then to take stock and to develop a strategy. And though I may be at odds with Leo often thinking that the structure can be changed, I would really like to bring it down in many ways. The conversation is critical, and that's why I completely endorse um, ESG through all the storms, through the storms that we all are, you know, yeah, going through. And is there a future, not only for us, but for the planet? I think we need to be really real, and ESG is part of that.
Thank you, ma'am. In order to mark the occasion, we thought it would be a good time to design a new logo that defines ESG. And so we're launching a brand new logo that our friends from Tepoy have created for us. So, if you all remember the introduction that Miss Madhu gave to all of us, she very accurately even described what the logo is going to be. So, we could move to the unveiling. Hope everybody liked that. So, as you can see, the E up there stands for justice, and we've also got the red, which stands for earth, as Ms. Bhushan had already mentioned those elements. And the S, the three lines in green, denote action as well as nature. And the yellow dots at the bottom left is all about inclusivity, and that in the colored logo is yellow, which depicts the sun. And the G is all about openness and is in blue, which is for water. And well, she's already explained the four elements of ESG. So we'll move on to the next part of the session, which is announcing a fellowship that ESG has set up. I would like to call Srimati Arundathi Nag to officially announce the Tekur Memorial Fellowship. Srimati Arundathi Nag is a prominent South Indian actress who has been involved in the multilingual theatre for over 25 years. She co-founded the Ranga Shankara Theatre along with her husband Shankar Nag. She is also an awardee of the 2008 Sangeet Natak Academy Award in Theatre. Welcome, ma'am. The Tekur Memorial Award is set up by ESG in honor of the late Dr. Shirdi Prasad Tekur, who was a trustee of ESG. I also request his family, who's here today, Ms. Uma Tekur, Mr. Pramod Tekur, and Ms. Harshini Tekur, to come on stage for the announcement of the fellowship. Dr. Tekur dedicated his life to the cause of public health, particularly in areas affected by severe environmental health risks. The goal of the Environmental Health Fellowship Program is to provide professional training and opportunities for early career public health, social work, environmental health professionals. The fellows will be trained under ESG trustees and other key professionals and leaders. More details about the fellowship can be accessed on our website.
Namaskara, Mrs. Tekur and Harshini and Leo and everyone at ESG, congratulations. This is such a moment, 25 years of a good fight. All the best. I know how difficult this whole route is, but I don't think it should deter us. Thank you, Leo. Thank you to the whole ESG team. You're doing what many of us should be doing with a larger heart and more commitment. Dr. Tekur was this wonderful doctor, rare to find in today's times, committed to public health, committed to the society. And I had the good fortune of meeting him. I did not tell you this, Leo, when you invited me, but this is serendipity that my late husband, Shankar Nag, wanted to start a dispensary at the farm where we lived. 40 years ago. And this was around 33 years ago that he managed to put up this clinic for the villagers around Singasandra village, where the villagers had no doctors, no medical facilities, and he got these doctor friends who were committed to come and attend to patients in this little village of ours called Singasandra and do it free of cost. Dr. Tekur was one of them, and Dr. Saraswati Karnad, who was also Girish Karnad's wife. These were the two doctors. One was a neonatal specialist, and Dr. Tekur, as the pediatrician, was helping poor villagers in this village of Singasandra to skip that appointment, having to go into the city and find a doctor in the first place who would tell them what was wrong with their child. And here I am, 32 years later, being asked to announce the Memorial Award. This is pure serendipity, an award in memory of the great man who really stepped out beyond his brief and helped people during the pandemic, helped people even without a pandemic. And we lost him, unfortunately, to the COVID, but his memory goes on with this memorial award where ESG has recognized people who can do grassroots research work in memory of Dr. Tekur. Thank you for having me over here. I think it's really a privilege to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for that, ma'am. May we have Ms. Harshini say a few words about this as well?
I wasn't expecting this, but first of all, I'd like to say congratulate Leo and ESG for making it to 25 years, and I hope you go along for many years to come. My best wishes to you. I'd like to thank you for remembering my father this way. He was a lot of things. He was a doctor, he was a counselor, he was a teacher, he was a mentor, but most of all, he was a learner. He loved to read. He read a lot from different material, from different sources. And I think it would give him great pleasure to know that his name is being memorialized this way because he likes knowledge transfer, and he would do it any way he got with anybody who he got. So this would be a great opportunity for young people to be mentored. Because information is freely available everywhere, but experience and distilling that knowledge requires guidance, requires mentorship, and I'm glad that that could be done through this fellowship. Thank you very much for the same, and thank you.
Thank you for that, ma'am. I request Amrita Menon to kindly honor Srimati Arundathi Nag with the ESG goodie bag. And also Ms. Uma Tekur and Harshini Tekur. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Ma'am, may I request you to remain on the stage for the next session as well? I would like to begin the next session with a quote by Robert F. Kennedy. He once said that few will have the greatness to bend history itself, but each of us can work to change a small portion of events. It is from numberless diverse acts of courage and belief that human history is shaped. Each time a man stands up for an ideal, or acts to improve the lot of others, or strikes out against injustice, he sends forth a tiny ripple of hope, and crossing each other from a million different centers of energy and daring these ripples, build a current which can sweep down the mightiest walls of oppression and resistance. Over the span of 25 years, ESG has worked with several such community leaders who have sent ripples of hope to those around them. And it would be incomplete to commemorate our anniversary without honoring these champions from whom we have drawn all our inspiration and continue to be inspired. I request Mr. Vinay Sreenivasa to introduce the community leaders, and I request Srimati Arundathi Nag to honor them. Mr. Vinay Srinivas is a friend and comrade of ESG. He's part of the core team and governing body at Alternative Law Forum. Come on, welcome.
Thank you, Nidhi, and thank you, ESG, for everything that you've done for Bangalore, Karnataka and India for the last 25 years. ನಮ್ಮಂಥ ರೈಟ್ ವಿಂಗಲ್ಲಿದ್ದವರು ಇವತ್ತು ESG ಎಲ್ಲ ಇಲ್ಲದೆ ಇದ್ದರೆ ನಾವು ಅಲ್ಲೇ ಉಳ್ಕೊತಿದ್ವಿ ಅನಿಸುತ್ತೆ. ESGಗೆ ಬಂದು ನಾವು ತುಂಬ ಕಲಿತು ಜನಪರವಾದ ಕೆಲಸಗಳ ಮಾಡೋಕ್ಕೆ ಶುರು ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀವಿ. ಸ್ನೇಹಿತರೆ, ಇವತ್ತು ESG ಅಂದರೆ ಬರೀ ESG ತಂಡ ಮಾತ್ರ ಅಲ್ಲ, ESGಲಿರೋರು ಮತ್ತು ಹಲವಾರು ಸಂಘಟನೆಗಳು ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಸೇರಿಕೊಂಡು ಒಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ಹಲವಾರು ಕೆಲಸಗಳನ್ನ ಮಾಡಿರೋದು. ಸೊ ESG ಕೆಲಸ ಮುಂದೆ ಹೋಗಬೇಕಾಗಿದೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಹಲವಾರು ಸಮುದಾಯದ ಸಂಘಟನೆಗಳು, ಅವ್ರ ನಾಯಕರು ಎಲ್ಲ ಒಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ಸೇರ್ಕೊಂಡಿರೋದ್ರಿಂದ ಈ ಒಂದು ಕೆಲಸ ಆಗಿದೆ. ಮೊದಲನೇದಾಗಿ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕದ ಅತ್ಯಂತ ಕ್ರಾಂತಿಕಾರಿ ಸಂಘಟನೆಯಾದ ದಲಿತ ಸಂಘರ್ಷ ಸಮಿತಿಯ ರಮೇಶ್ ಅವರು ಹಾಗೂ ಶ್ರೀನಿವಾಸ್ ಅವರು ದಯವಿಟ್ಟು ವೇದಿಕೆ ಮೇಲೆ ಬರಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಕೇಳ್ಕೊತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ರಮೇಶ್ ಸರ್, ಶ್ರೀನಿವಾಸ್ ಸರ್. ರಮೇಶ್ ಸರ್ ಮತ್ತು ಶ್ರೀನಿವಾಸ್ ಸರ್ ನಿಮಗೆಲ್ಲ ಮಾವಳಿಪುರ ಹೋರಾಟದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತೇ ಇರ್ಬೋದು. ಮಾವಳಿಪುರ ಹೋರಾಟ ಆಗಿರೋದ್ರಿಂದನೇ because of the Mavlipura agitation, Bangalore started paying attention to solid waste management and to segregation, etc. And Mavlipura would not have happened without Mr. Srinivas and without Mr. Ramesh and ESG, all of them joining hands together. ಅಷ್ಟು ಮಾತ್ರ ಅಲ್ಲ, ಅದು ಬರೀ ಮಾವಳಿಪುರ ಅಂತ ಮಾತ್ರ ಅಲ್ಲ, ಯಾವುದೇ ಒಂದು ಜನಪರವಾದ ವಿಷಯಗಳು ತಗೊಳ್ಳಿ. ಈಗ SK ಲೇಔಟ್ಗೆ ಏನು ಸರ್ಕಾರ ರೈತರ ವಿರುದ್ಧವಾಗಿ ನಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ, ಅಲ್ಲೂ ಸಹ ರೈತರಿಗೆ ಸಾಥ್ ನೀಡಿ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ರಮೇಶ್ ಸರ್ ಮತ್ತು ಶ್ರೀನಿವಾಸ್ ಸರ್ ವೇದಿಕೆಗೆ ಬರಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಕೇಳ್ಕೊತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ಅದೇ ರೀತಿ ಚಳ್ಳಕೆರೆ ಹೋರಾಟದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಗೊತ್ತಿರ್ಬೋದು. ಯು ಮೈಟ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಹರ್ಡ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ದ ಕ್ಯಾಂಪೇನ್ ಟು ಪ್ರಿಸರ್ವ್ ದ ಅಮೃತ್ ಮಹಲ್ ಕಾವಲ್ ಅಟ್ Chalkere. This whole campaign was spread over many years. It's a very spirited campaign to preserve the grasslands and the ecosystems there. And it was led by Mr. Karianna and Mr. Obanna. ಕರಿಯಣ್ಣ ಸರ್ ಮತ್ತು ಓಬಣ್ಣ ಸರ್ ವೇದಿಕೆಗೆ ಬರಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಕೇಳ್ಕೊತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ಕರಿಯಣ್ಣ ಸರ್ AIKS ಸಂಘಟನೆಯ ಮುಖಂಡರಾಗಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ದೊಡ್ಡಳ್ಳಾರ್ತಿ ಮತ್ತು ಕುದಾಪುರದಲ್ಲಿ ಓಬಣ್ಣ ಸರ್ ಇದ್ದರು. ಇವರಿಬ್ಬರು ಸೇರಿಕೊಂಡು ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಸುತ್ತಲೂ ಹಳ್ಳಿಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಅಷ್ಟೆಲ್ಲ ಕಡೆ ಓಡಾಡಿ ಸರ್ಕಾರಕ್ಕೆ ಹಲವಾರು ಮನವಿಗಳನ್ನ ಕೊಟ್ಟು ದೊಡ್ಡ ಪಾದಯಾತ್ರೆಗಳನ್ನ ಮಾಡಿ ಇವತ್ತು ಇಶ್ಯೂ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಪ್ರಾಮಿನೆನ್ಸ್ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿದೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಅದು ಕರಿಯಣ್ಣ ಅವರು ಮತ್ತು ಓಬಣ್ಣ ಅವರಿಂದ. ಅದೇ ರೀತಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಜೊತೆ ವನಜಾಕ್ಷಿ ಮೇಡಮ್ ಅವರಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ವನಜಾಕ್ಷಿ ಮೇಡಮ್ ಅವರು ಗಾಂಧಿ ಬಜಾರಲ್ಲಿ ಬೀದಿ ವ್ಯಾಪಾರ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಮತ್ತು ಚುನಾಯಿತ ಪಟ್ಟಣ ವ್ಯಾಪಾರ ಸಮಿತಿ ಸದಸ್ಯರು. ಮಿಸ್ ವನಜಾಕ್ಷಿ ದಯವಿಟ್ಟು ವೇದಿಕೆಗೆ ಬರಬೇಕು. She is a street vendor and elected member of the Town Vending Committee, South Zone BBMP. She is a spirited street vendor leader and a member of the All India Central Council of Trade Unions, the Bangalore Jilla Bidi Vyapari Sangatnegala Okkuta. She's been working very hard to protect the rights of street vendors in Gandhi Bazaar since 2 decades now. ಏನೇ ಕಷ್ಟಗಳು ಬಂದರೂ ಅದನ್ನು ಎದುರಿಸಿ ಮುಂದೆ ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. I request Arundathi Nag ma'am to honor everybody. ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು ಅರುಂಧತಿ ನಾಗ್ ಮ್ಯಾಮ್. ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ. ಸಂಗತಿಗಳೇ, ಇವತ್ತು ಸಂವಿಧಾನ ಉಳಿತಿದೆ, ಸಂವಿಧಾನದ ಮೌಲ್ಯಗಳು ಉಳಿತಾ ಇದೆ ಅಂದರೆ ಈ ಜನಪರ ನಾಯಕರಿಂದ ಮತ್ತು ESG ಅಂತ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಯಿಂದ. ಸೊ ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಮತ್ತೊಮ್ಮೆ ಹೃತ್ಪೂರ್ವಕ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು.
ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ತಮ್ಮ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for honoring all our community leaders, and thank you community leaders for inspiring ESG to do the work that we do. And thank you, Vinay, for introducing all of them.